Welcome back, my friends. And if you're new to the channel, take a moment to subscribe and support the content. At some point in life, every man encounters a moment he never truly prepares for. A moment that feels heavier than expected, not because of something dramatic that was said, but because something quietly changed. Everything seems fine, until it isn't. Her voice sounds different, her energy feels distant. The connection that once felt natural suddenly feels uncertain, and without any clear explanation, emotional distance begins to grow. This experience leaves many men confused, questioning themselves, and replaying conversations in their mind. But here's the truth most people never talk about. This video is not about blaming women, and it is not about manipulation or emotional games. This is about understanding women's psychology, so men learn to recognize emotional shifts instead of reacting impulsively to them. Because emotional damage rarely comes from loud arguments or obvious conflict. It happens quietly, through silence, through withdrawal, through subtle changes in behavior that go unnoticed, until it's too late. When men don't understand these shifts, they respond emotionally. When they do understand them, they respond with awareness and control. In this video you'll learn how these emotional changes happen, why they affect men so deeply, and how understanding them can completely change the way you handle relationships. When a woman causes emotional pain, it usually doesn't happen through loud arguments or dramatic scenes. There are no long explanations, no clear confrontation. Instead, something quieter happens. Her responses shorten. Her warmth fades. Her emotional presence slowly pulls away. From a psychological point of view, this withdrawal can come from many places. At times she feels emotionally overloaded and needs space. At times she is trying to protect herself from vulnerability. Sometimes, she is unconsciously measuring emotional strength, and in some cases she believes the man will accept the behavior without resistance. What most men misunderstand is where the real test exists. The distance itself is not the test. The silence is not the test. The emotional pullback is not the deciding factor. The real test is what happens next. It is how the man reacts when the emotional comfort disappears. Does he lose control? Does he rush to fix things? Does he seek reassurance immediately? Or does he remain composed and grounded? From a psychological perspective, reactions reveal more than words ever could. A man's response to emotional withdrawal communicates his emotional stability, self-respect, and inner balance. And that response often determines how the dynamic evolves, far more than the withdrawal itself. Most men react immediately when something feels wrong. They rush into conversations. They try to fix emotions before understanding them. They ask questions, explain intentions, and look for reassurance as quickly as possible. On the surface, this looks mature, but psychologically, it often sends the opposite message. Instant emotional reactions communicate urgency. Urgency signals dependence, and dependence quietly weakens a man's emotional position. When a man needs clarity right away, he reveals that uncertainty unsettles him. When he over-explains his intentions, he shows fear of losing connection. When he chases reassurance, he hands emotional control to the other person. Over time, this creates predictability, and predictability reduces perceived value in emotional dynamics. This isn't because caring is unattractive, it's because losing emotional control is women's psychology, is not drawn to panic or pressure. It responds to calmness, stability, and self-regulation. A man who can pause instead of reacting shows inner strength. A man who doesn't rush to fix emotional discomfort demonstrates confidence, and confidence creates safety. Emotional strength is not loud, it is composed. And the man who remains grounded when emotions are tested is the man who maintains respect. When emotional tension appears, most women expect a reaction. They expect visible emotion, anger that shows frustration, sadness that reveals attachment, questions that seek reassurance, pressure that tries to restore closeness. These reactions are familiar, predictable, and easy to read. What they do not expect is emotional restraint. Calm detachment breaks the pattern. It disrupts the emotional rhythm they are prepared for. Instead of clarity, it creates uncertainty, and uncertainty forces the mind to slow down and reflect. This kind of silence is often misunderstood. It is not avoidance. It is not punishment. And it is not emotional games. It is control. A man who remains composed during emotional pressure shows internal stability. He does not rush to explain. He does not react impulsively. He allows space instead of emotional noise. Psychologically, this makes him difficult to interpret, and what cannot be easily read becomes mentally engaging. When emotions are tested and a man stays grounded, Attention shifts inward. Curiosity replaces certainty. Reflection replaces assumption. In women's psychology, emotional strength is not loud. It is quiet confidence. It is the ability to pause instead of panic. And a man who can hold that calm naturally stands out from those who cannot. Women are naturally very sensitive to emotional energy. Even subtle shifts in behavior are noticed immediately. When a man quietly pulls back his attention without creating drama or making announcements, the change is felt instantly. He stops being constantly available, stops over-investing in her emotions, and redirects his energy toward his own life, goals and priorities. This subtle withdrawal doesn't mean he disappears or becomes cold. Instead, it communicates something far stronger. Independence. Independence is a powerful signal in women's psychology because it demonstrates emotional self-reliance and strength. By not chasing or seeking constant validation, a man creates a psychological shift. She begins to notice him differently, reassessing his value and experiencing the effect of absence. This quiet, controlled energy is magnetic. It draws attention without effort and inspires respect naturally. When you stop explaining yourself, you remove the emotional safety net she expected. You no longer soften the situation by justifying your feelings or clarifying your intentions. Instead, the responsibility quietly shifts inward. She begins to look at her own behavior rather than analyzing your reactions. From a psychological point of view, self-reflection has a deeper impact than direct confrontation. Arguments create defensiveness, but silence creates space for thought. Without your explanations guiding the narrative, her mind starts filling in the gaps on its own. Questions begin to surface internally. Did I cross a line? Did I misunderstand him? Why didn't he react the way others usually do? This inner conversation is powerful. It's where emotional awareness begins to form. And once awareness is present, behavior naturally starts to change, without force, pressure, or confrontation. The most powerful signal a man can ever send is unshaken self-respect. Not loud arguments, not emotional pressure, not begging to be understood. Just clear standards, quietly upheld. When a man refuses to lower himself emotionally, even when he is hurt, something shifts. He doesn't argue to prove his point. He doesn't chase to save the connection. He doesn't explain himself to be validated. Instead, he remains grounded. When a woman realizes that her actions did not shake his sense of worth, her perception changes naturally. She begins to see him differently, not as someone easily moved, but as someone emotionally stable and self-aware. This shift does not come from manipulation or power games. It comes from maturity. Emotional control is not about suppressing feelings. It's about choosing responses instead of reacting impulsively. In relationships, the man who controls his emotions sets the direction of the dynamic. He decides what he accepts, what he tolerates, and what he walks away from. And walking away with dignity leaves a lasting impression. Long after arguments fade and conversations end, composure is remembered. Silence paired with self-respect speaks louder than emotional chaos ever could. This kind of strength builds respect, not fear. It creates clarity, not confusion, and it allows a man to protect his peace without needing to hurt anyone in the process. If this video helped you better understand women's psychology and emotional dynamics, make sure to subscribe, like, and support the channel, because awareness is always the first step toward emotional strength and personal growth.